guys. So we have a really exciting thing happening. The Delta College STEM bus is coming to Clare Middle School for our 7th graders on May 13th of this week, which is Thursday. So I want to give you our pre-activity so we have it ready to go so we can do the activity with the STEM bus when they get here. So I'm going to give you a brief history. It's about parachutes, okay, because we're going to be designing some parachutes. As a physicist, is happy to point out gravity is a force that exists between any two objects that have mass. And I know that you guys can't really read this clearly on the screen, but I'm reading it to you, so follow along as best you can so you have some background knowledge before we begin today's activity. So gravity is a force that exists between any two objects that have mass. Weight is a measure of the force of gravity pulling in an object. But does that also mean that heavier objects will automatically fall faster? In 1509, Galileo Galilei went to the top of the Leaning Tower of Pisa in Italy in order to test this exact theory. According to the popular tale, he simultaneously dropped different pairs of items such as cannon balls and muskets and gold and silver and wood. In each test, one object was heavier than the other, yet he tried to make sure they were the same, to drop them at the same time. Up until that moment, people figured that heavier objects fell faster than lighter objects, but Galileo proved that gravity accelerates all objects at the same rate, regardless of their mass or composition. So I'm going to skip the next paragraph because we are not going to have time for this activity. But what happened? Resistance and friction are what cause changes in acceleration, or how fast something travels downward. Air resistance, also called drag, a term you'll need to know for this activity, slowed down the heavier piece in the second activity. Drag opposes the direction that the object is moving and it slows it down. So regardless of weight, the more resistance or friction an object has, the slower it falls. To slow down a fall of an object, you will want to create more drag. That's the goal of a parachute. An early concept of a parachute was found in an anonymous manuscript from the 1470s, long before Galileo was dropping stuff off the Tower of Pisa. It wasn't the best design. The parachute was too small to offer enough resistance, but the design introduced a new concept to artists and engineers at the time. A few years later, Leonardo da Vinci sketched a similar concept of falling safely using a maximum drag decelerator, aka we call this the modern parachute. The concept wasn't new, however. The use of air resistance to slow down a fall can be dated back to 90 BC. According to the Chinese historian, a legend described an emperor using 2 bamboo hats to jump off a roof and safely land on the ground. Chinese acrobats also used parachutes of various kinds to perform falling stunts. Legends regarding the use of these parachutes date back to long before Leonardo da Vinci made his design. Parachute designs continue to evolve and be tested over time. In 1785, Jean-Pierre Blanchard made the first emergency parachute use of a parachute after a hot air balloon he was in exploded. He was also the first to design a foldable silk parachute. Before that, parachutes were built with a rigid frame, more of a rigid airfoil than a modern parachute. In 1837, Roger Cocking distinguished himself by becoming parachuting's first fatality. He fell to his death using an inverted cone-shaped parachute with its point down from 5,000 feet. About 100 years later, parachutes came with a harness and a folded knapsack-like container that we're accustomed to today. But that was the work of a Russian actor named, I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. Gleb is credited with inventing the first backpack parachute in 1911. Supposedly, after he witnessed the death of the pilot Leo during an air show in St. Petersburg. As a result of the horrible experience, a former theater actor dedicated the rest of his life to preventing unnecessary deaths of airplane pilots. I'm going to skip down a little bit. You will have this article, so you can read some of these notes too. But today, parachutes are used to deploy troops. Come back for part 2, please.